All right, thank you so much for being here. This is our first panel. We've every year we try to do something a little different, try to improve the meetup. So we thought we've got some amazing folks here. It'd be great to be able to highlight some of these amazing folks so that we all benefit from the knowledge around the table. Today we've got what I would say are the three top Honda Element mechanics, actually Honda technicians in our region. We have Daniel Ho from South Tacoma Honda, Dustin Byers over at Overland Antidote, and Nick Stice over at Tonkin, Gresham Honda. And yeah, well deserved. And of course, what we'd love to do is be able to get you to know them, and also put faces to the names so that you can come and ask your questions afterwards. But the other part of this too is that our cars are getting old. 2003 to 2011. It's not uncommon for us to have 300,000 mile cars. It's really important for us to be able to keep these beautiful and wonderful machines on the road. And these are the people that will help us all do that. So I'm wondering if we can start off by if you can introduce yourselves. Say a little bit about where you're at, and then if you could share a little bit about your journey to becoming a Honda technician. I'd also love to know what other cars you drive, because I know some of you all have multiple Elements and other fun things in the garage as well. So why don't we start here with Dustin.
My name is Dustin. I work for Overland Antidote, actually co-founder, owner. Started with Acura in 2006, so that's when I started working on cars. Been with them, with Honda till 2017. I stopped wrenching actually. Started to be a service advisor and then got into management, and currently opened up Overland Antidote, and we're just having fun modifying these things.
Dustin, can you tell us where they can find Overland Antidote?
We're located in Graham, Washington, so a little south of the Tacoma, Puyallup area.
And how many Elements do you have?
Overland Antidote, I think we have about 6 of them.
Woo! That's how we make these numbers, folks. We invite the people with multiple Elements. Yeah, the hoarders. Daniel.
Hello, my name is Dan. Work at South Tacoma Honda. Started initially changing oil at Jiffy Lube when I was 17. Got a job at South Tacoma. Been there ever since, 33 years now. I'm an old guy now. I've been there forever. Cars we have about 11 Elements in our family. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, nephews, just many. Also a couple little old Hondas. I have an old 92, 76 Civic. Recently bought a 1980 Monte Carlo lowrider. So I've started to dabble in a little bit more stuff, but
And Daniel, if they want you to work on their cars, how do they get a hold of you? And
so
they make that happen?
at our booth over here at the South Tacoma Honda booth, my daughter works there with us as well. She has some of my business cards and an advisor that we deal with there. So you could get his advisor card and mine, and just ask for me when you come in and see that guy Jay. He will take care of us.
Great, thanks, Dan. Also want to give a shout out to both South Tacoma Honda and Overland Antidote for being sponsors for this event. That's how we're able to keep this thing free. So a big shout out to them. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. And the last to round out, we've got Element royalty here with Nick Stice. So everybody knows Nick.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I never thought any of this would be possible without all of you, so I want to first off start off by thanking you guys. You guys make this possible for all of us, really, and this is what we make our living on, so thank you. Really appreciate you. My life as a mechanic started out, I was 18 years old. My dad brought home a Volkswagen, and it turned into a nightmare. And I was paying mechanics to work on and all that stuff, so I started volunteering at a local air-cooled shop, where I worked there for about 4 years, and then I finally jumped ship and went to Honda, pushing broom, worked my way up through the rank. And now I've been with Gresham Honda for 18 years, so they treated me really, really well. I've enjoyed the journey the entire time. Still have the Volkswagens. I've got a 63 ragtop bug that I've completely restored. And it definitely keeps me busy. And then I also have a 68 bay window Westphalia bus. So, and then like Dan, I've got every single one of my family members into them. I've actually shipped them to Maui. But pretty much I think I've got about 8 in the family that all own them. So it's like, why not? They're one of the best rides out there. So, yeah. And if you want to get a hold of me, best way to do is just call Gresham Honda. We're outside in Troutdale. Any advisor kind of knows the name of the game now. Calling in, they just say, hey, I want Nick. It's a weird thing. Haven't gotten used to it yet, but that's the way you get me. So, anyways, thank you.
So these aren't only Honda Element technicians, but these are Honda Element owners times 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you know, folks. So these folks really know our vehicles well. So know that if you take them to one of these guys, that they will be definitely in good hands. I wanted to ask you, what's the difference between a Honda mechanic or an automotive mechanic versus a Honda technician? Because I feel like there's a difference there.
I think I can answer that one for you. So, for instance, since I was a mechanic at Volkswagen, when I came in the door, they wouldn't really let me touch a car. And I felt like, oh man, that's a slap in the face. But their whole goal was they want you to be trained on their product. And so what they do, I went through what they call a PAC program. And that's actual Honda schooling. 2-year program that you go through, and then actually Dan recently came down. We have a training center that's off Sandy Boulevard in Portland, and we recertify down there. So as you can imagine, every single new car that comes out, you have to learn it. Everything's new, it's constant learning. So now we have electric cars that are out, and there's a whole nother, era of car I've got to learn. So I think that's kind of what separates us from the rest is the schooling and training.
Yeah, they just keep sending you, wanting you to upgrade and learn and do more and more. So you got to stay familiar with the newer product.
Well, and I think too the key is that Honda wants you to learn it. It's a pride thing for them. It's kind of like ASEs, I would say, because like on our wall at work we have all the guys in our shop that have their own personal plaque, and it shows everything that you're certified in. So it's kind of it's a benefit for everyone at that point. So.
Great, thanks. So the first question that I have is, what is one thing each of you would recommend that we all do to keep our elements on the road for years of enjoyment? So I'd love to hear, what's that one thing we have to keep in mind? What's the one thing we need to make sure we
check your oil level.
Oil. It'll go forever. Keep oil in it.
Transmission fluid.
Sorry,
Yeah, engine oil and transmission fluid. Those things are some of the 2 most important ones.
The other thing I noticed is like, and I'll tell it to everybody, but check your fans. It's an easy thing. You turn your AC on in your car, you get out and look under the hood, both cooling fans should be running. I'd say probably 80% of every single element that I work on, the cooling fan's dead. So, and then you're only running on one and you go on a trip and you're overheating. So that's pretty key too.
As far as essential maintenance or essential repairs that need to happen in some timely manner, oftentimes we miss things, right? If we don't know what we're looking for, we can let things go. I know I've let things go on my element. What are some things that we should consider and think about that need maintenance or repair or regularly updated, or things that we don't necessarily think about or aren't totally obvious to us, like oil?
Well, again, I mean, as Honda technicians, you had, well, it used to be where you'd have like a 30, 60, 90K service, and they'd come in, and for our dealer, what we would do is we'd lubricate all the door latches, we'd clean the run channels, they sell this stuff called Shinitsu grease. You can actually go around and treat all the seals. So like on Honda Del Sols, we call them Honda Del Soaks. My wife's got one. It's a bathtub most of the time, but you can't get the seals anymore. So what do? You condition, you clean them, it makes them last longer. I mean, besides obviously changing your oil and everything, if you're taking to somebody that's doing your maintenance for you, and they're seeing that car continuously throughout the life of your car, it's going to last a lot longer because that mechanic's known what's been done, what hasn't been done.
On that same note, as far as the fans go, thermostat. A lot of people overlook thermostat. You never think, or water pump, yeah. But thermostat's something simple and easy that you could take care of, but it's overlooked quite a bit, and that's going to go hand in hand with your cooling fans. So having a good thermostat working and cooling properly is good.
They kind of nailed it. One of the things that a lot of people also forget about, especially if it's a manual, checking your fluids, your clutch fluid, that stuff gets pretty nasty. It'll rust those lines from the inside out. Same with the brake fluid. A lot of people just don't expect to change the brake fluid, or that literally absorbs moisture. So those are a couple important ones. And your compliance bushings. So yeah, anything rubber, you got to keep an eye on that stuff. So the age of these vehicles, those rubbers are deteriorating. So just over time, rubber starts to break down. So keeping an eye on your brake lines, your compliance bushings, that are the front lower control arm bushings are made out of rubber, so they deteriorate over time. So those are a couple things that people don't think about checking.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dustin. We will open it up here in a couple questions for audience questions. So if you have a question that you think a number of our audience folks would benefit from, I'd love you to start thinking about what that question would be. Now's your chance. We've got 3 of the best people here right in front of you, so we get a chance to be able to ask them that question. So think about what you may want to know. The other thing that I'm interested in is, what have you found to be kind of common issues with these beloved cars that we need to keep an eye out for? What are things that you see come into the shop fairly regularly with Honda Elements?
I would say the dreaded P2646 code. I think the majority of people here have dealt with that code. So yeah.
So we hear about that code a lot. We see it a lot on social media. Can you expand and let us know, for the layperson, what is that code in particular? What happens there?
Yeah, so it's a VTEC oil pressure switch code. Essentially, the 2 things that cause it is low oil level. So these things do have a tendency to consume some oil. So you get low on oil, you lose some oil pressure, it'll cause that code. One of the second most common things is you have a windshield washer squirter on the top of your hood, and it is not sealed very well, so water will get past that squirter and drip right into the top of the pressure switch. And that'll cause that code. It'll short circuit that sensor and cause that code as well.
Great, thanks. Dan or Nick, any other things to add to that one?
I mean, that's kind of like the dreaded code for us. I mean, it comes in and normally I end up just pulling the valve, replacing the screen. Depends on where the customer's coming from. I've had it before where I just say, let's do the valve, let's do the screen. And then what's nice now is touching on the water that gets in the two-pin. The rubber degrades. Our training center once told us, like, with any of those plugs, the life expectancy is like 3 times on and off, and then they're no good. So what I've been starting to do is replacing the pigtail on top, which is made by Dorman, and then you can get away with, no water getting into that two-pin. So, but yeah, that's always the question when somebody comes in and they say, hey, I got that code, and it's like, did it rain today? Did you wash your car? So it happens. We've been through it millions of times. So, but yeah.
So the older I've gotten, the more I have to go see my physician and doctor. At least that's what I'm told. I'm still a little stubborn. But I'm curious, as far as wanting to make sure that your car's in good shape. How, now that these cars are, at newest 2011, how often should we be taking our cars in for general checkups, or is it really just taking them in when we have issues and problems?
Well, I would say, touching on your subject, when you say taking them in for issues and problems, that's like me when I visit the doctor. My wife pushes me to go, and usually that's way too late. So I would say, if you're servicing your car, if the car's coming for an oil change, normally with everybody's normal driving, I'm going to see it every 6 months usually. And some of them are over a year, depending on how you drive. But as that car comes in, with any of us, you get an inspection with that car, and then you normally get a list. And on some of them, you get a longer list, and it's just the age of the car. But at least you're going to know what's wrong with it. But again, I mean, there's no waiting on anything. It's just more or less of getting to somebody that knows what they're looking at.
Just regular maintenance, just coming in and just like your 6-month checkup, like you're going to the doctor, same thing. We're going to be there and we're going to look at it and find out.
I would say one of the things that don't count is taking it to a Jiffy Lube, though.
Yeah.
So if you guys take your car to a Jiffy Lube, they're not doing an inspection on your car like they should be. They're just changing your oil. They're just going to get in and out. Yeah, exactly. So if you want to, twice a year is plenty, once a year, depending on your driving, like Nick was saying. But you need to take it to a place that's doing an inspection. So, and they'll inspect all of your other fluids, filters, your bushings and stuff. So take it to the right place.
and kind of touching on that too, if you go to Jiffy Lube, I mean, most of the time you have, and I have kids that work for me at my dealer. You know, you have somebody green that's looking at the car, they're selling you. But the other point too is for most of us now, and I think you guys actually have a system now where you're taking videos. And for me, my biggest thing with people is I'm old school. I'm a visual person, I'm a visual learner. I'll bring the customer back and I'll show you what's wrong with your car and why it needs to be replaced. And it's key. And so now guess what we're doing on every single car? Everybody gets a video. You get pointed out what's wrong with your car. And you can see it, you know, we don't have to have you out there. You can be out of town and get a video sent to you, which is awesome, you know, and the liability and the trust is there because guess what? I'm pointing at what's wrong with your car. So it's cool.
Great. Now I'd love to be able to open it up to some audience questions. I'm curious if there's someone in our audience that might have a question for our panelists here. Yeah, can you come up and come to the mic, please? I hope that doesn't scare folks. Show them how it's done. I just want to make sure everybody's able to. We can do it. You can do it. Way to go, Mikey. Question for everyone. Timing chain. When should we think about doing a timing chain replacement?
It's a great question. I mean, they're designed to be lifetime. So, in my opinion, it's one of those things where you'll start noticing a decrease in power, and you'll get a check engine light.
You get a code.
Yeah.
But I've even had them too, where they won't code and they'll go. And I don't know. It's usually an oil pressure thing, but Honda actually has a spec. There's an inspection plate that's on the side of the motor, and if you pull that off, you can actually measure how much the tensioner is pushed out, which in turn tells you how much the chain is stretched. Mine's got 214,000 miles on it, and it's still way within spec and perfectly fine. And do I even think about replacing it? No. So, I mean, to answer your question, you can have it checked if you're really worried about it, but normally there'll be signs like that. So,
I've seen them go 400,000 or 500,000 miles, and the biggest key on timing change is maintenance. Keeping your oil changed, keeping it fresh. That chain will last forever.
Thanks, guys. Yes. So what's the highest mileage you all have seen come through your shop?
I personally own one that had 420,000 original miles on the motor and trans. And it was fine. The car was perfect. The only reason it failed, and then I bought it from the guy with that, is he was on a fishing trip and his actual catalytic converter plugged, and he decided to keep driving it, which in turn took the motor. I could have taken it, probably just put a head gasket on it, but at that point, it's pretty tired. But I'd say it's probably one of the higher ones I've seen.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable when you hit 200,000 and you're just breaking it in.
We've seen Accords. I haven't seen Elements. My daughter's Element is 285. Seen old Accords, 92, 93 Accords with 300 plus. It's still going.
We have a customer that comes into us, and she's actually, she's got to be in her 80s now, but she's had her CRV since new, and she's like, this is my last car I'm going to buy. And her goal is 500,000 miles, and she's, I think, at like 486, and it's the same motor that's in her Element, so it's doable. It's just, like you say, maintenance, and having it checked up, you know, and looked at.
Dustin, what's that look like for you? What are some of the high mileage Elements you've seen?
Yeah, I think the highest that I've seen is in the 4s. So not too many more than that, but honestly, they're not really old enough to be higher than that. So, you know, in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see them higher. I think we'll see 6s, 7s.
I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around that some of them are over 20 years old now. It doesn't ever, like, you look at those cars and you go, oh my God, yeah, they're over 20 years old now, so.
I know at one point we're going to be able to get those classic license plates, aren't we?
We get this question all the time.
Is Honda bringing back the Element? That is the question. The rumor mill.
There's obviously stuff circulating now because they have some patents put out. It's kind of weird looking. I don't know if they'll ever really be able to recreate the Element the way it is. I mean, that's like saying a split window bus to a van again. Is it the same thing? No. It would be cool if they do, but I mean, I don't know. When I first started, there was Honda Elements just sitting all over the lot, not being sold. And that's why Honda got rid of it. And then of course it took off, and then everybody's like, well, where's the Elements? And it's like, well, everybody that wanted one bought one, and they're all going to last 500,000 miles. So why would they keep building them? So, but now everybody's stuff is wearing out, as we see. We work on them, so maybe they will.
The patents are out there, though.
You guys will know before we do.
Probably.
Yeah, there's a question out here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if this has kind of already been asked, but getting your Element to like 500,000 miles, what's some of that maintenance you need to watch for? Like, what are some things you should be really keeping an eye on?
All right, so the question is how do we get our Elements out to 500,000 miles? What are the things that we need to watch for? What are the things that we need to do in order to be able to do that, make that happen?
Well, the big thing we stress is oil changes and keeping that thing fluids in it, coolant in it, transfers, and if it's just a little bit that you know, it's not a lot of money to just change the transmission fluid. You know, that extra help will make it longer.
And Nick touched point on those cooling fans.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't pay attention to those cooling fans. You overheat your motor and then you're done. So they're made out of aluminum. They flex.
The same with the AC relay. If that cuts out, then that'll shut off your fans as well. Something to look at as well.
So if we get a cooling fan that shuts off, will that engine light come on? So how do we know? How do we know for someone who doesn't wrench? Will the temperature?
Sitting in traffic, high heat traffic, you're going to see it at stoplights, going up hill climbs, yep.
Wait, Aubrey, do you have the
She has a story.
Would you like me to answer?
Yes, come on over here and
Come on down.
shed some knowledge on us about these cooling fans.
Occasionally, having a husband that's a 33-plus year tech is not a benefit because your car gets neglected. But in that particular situation, we were going to Mount Rainier, and he happened to be in the driver's seat, which he absolutely never is, and it was my car, and it was clean, and I wanted to drive it. So we were heading up to High Rock, and on the way there, he just keeps glancing over, which he does all the time. We were just on a trip in the motorhome, and he's watching the gauges, not the road, and it's brand new. He just happens to look at my gauges and screams at me, "Don't you look at your gauges? Your temperature gauge is high." He made me pull over immediately. We have a caravan of family behind us that also had to pull over, and what did we do? We turned on but before that, turn on the heater. You want anything to get those fans going. That was the thing he was listening for. Your fans aren't turning on. I had one fan, so yeah.
In a bind, you can take this horn stop relay and switch it with the AC relay. Yeah.
But if you do not switch your fans, where's my brother? Raise your hand, Chris. Because he's a prime example of what will happen if you do not replace your fans. I can tell you.
He overheated it several times, and then I ended up putting a new motor in.
No, brand new motor. That's a lot of fun.
There he is, yeah.
Well, and they kind of touched on it too. If you run into that situation where you got high temps, the best thing you can do is turn your heater on, turn your fan on high, and you're going to use that heater core to pull the heat off the motor. So you'll actually save the motor if you do that. So if you ever get yourself in that situation where you start overheating and you don't know what relays what, just turn your heater on. And you're going to sweat, but you'll save yourself a lot of money.
Yeah, don't wait to fix that in the summertime when you're having to crank the heat on in order to keep your engine cool.
Day of the year.
I personally had the same exact thing happen to me, and it's a nightmare. You just don't want to be in that situation.
So I've got a question here, and then we'll go over here afterwards. Ma'am, can I have your question, please?
I just recently learned that I was supposed to have gotten a valve adjustment at some point in time. So I got one at about almost 200,000 miles. When should we be getting, because my mechanic who's had my car this whole time has never mentioned it.
All right, so we hear this a lot, valve adjustments. What's the deal with valve adjustments? And we've got time for 2 more questions. Oh, okay. So we'll take 2 questions. You're the last question here. So if you can share a little bit more about valve adjustments, what does that mean? How often do they have to do them?
So again, on Hondas, they put out maintenance schedules for all that stuff. So right around 100,000 miles is when you want to start thinking about doing it. What I run into most of the time is the exhaust valves are super tight, and then it'll start running weird. And some people will notice that and be like, hey, it's kind of strange. Get them adjusted. If you have a mechanic that says, I listen to them and they're fine, find another mechanic. I don't know how many times that I get somebody that comes in and goes, oh, my mechanic says they sound fine. That's not checking valve lash. That's just getting around what they don't want to do. There's a couple actually different ways we can even check without even breaking them open, which is we get what they call a data list on our Honda computers, and you can actually look at the map sensor, and if it's above a certain threshold, we can actually tell if they're tight. So it's kind of like a wizardry thing we have at our fingertips, which makes it nice. But anyways, if you haven't had it done, just get it done.
So after 100,000, when's the next time you should do it?
200.
Every 100,000.
Oh, so every 100,000. Okay, so make sure that you check online for that the regular maintenance that we need to make sure that we're getting done.
You should be doing your spark plugs same time you do your valve adjustment. If you're doing plugs, you should be adjusting your valves.
Okay.
The one of the things that you'll notice is a decrease in fuel economy. So if you're seeing some fuel economy that you're losing and nothing's showing itself, go check engine lights or anything. You may have some valves that are out of adjustment.
And lack of power and all that stuff too.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that we want better fuel economy.
And more power.
And more power, so.
Yeah, let's lift them all. Let's make it better.
Yeah, just throw a bunch of stuff on there, about 500 more pounds of essential modifications, lifted, big fat tires. We have one more question. Yes. Your question, please.
You guys explain scenarios, pull over, turn off the engine, and call a tow truck.
So some scenarios where you would actually pull over, don't try to drive it home, and call the tow truck, call your AAA.
Well, I mean,
what are those scenarios?
So if an engine light's on in the car, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. But if you have an engine light that's on and it's flashing, that's when you pull it over and you call a tow truck. Because what it means is that it's actually pre-detonating, and then you're putting raw fuel through that's unburned. So in turn, you're cooking your cat. You're really messing up the internals of the motor. That's when I would call it and call a tow truck.
Or unless it just flat out dies and you're not going anywhere, but yeah.
Overheating as well. If you can't get your temperature to stay below the halfway mark, I'd pull over and get a tow.
All right, so I'm hearing flashing engine light is where we want to do that, and pull it over.
And I heard somebody say limp mode, and what they mean by limp mode is you'll get in the car and it won't want to accelerate. And that's usually like what the VTEC does. A lot of times you can still drive it, but good luck. I had a lady one time that came from Biggs Junction to my work, which is way east of where I live, in limp mode. And she made it, but I mean, doing 40 on a highway is not recommended.
So before we end, I'd love to offer you an opportunity to share anything else you'd like in general, if there's anything else you want to share with the crowd.
Well, I'll say that I'm actually really honored to be sitting with these guys. Like I said, I never ever thought that this would become such a huge event and have so many people going, oh my God, that's Nick Stice. You know, it's just crazy to me. I mean, I brought my dad here last year and he had no idea what was going on, and then he's just like, you're famous, you know. I didn't think it was going to be a thing. So, but now it's nice because I've had guys like Dan and Dusty here, you know, and it's like, I'll have people that call me from Northern Washington, and it's like, go see these guys. You know, I'd love for you to drive down. I'd love to work on your car, but honestly, these guys do great work. So I'm really, really honored to be sitting with these guys today.
So if you want to see Dan, make sure you check out the South Tacoma Honda tent. If you want to see Dustin, Overland Antidote is right over here. And if you want to talk to Nick Stice, Nick's rigs is right over there, to the right-hand side. All right. How about a big round of applause for our Honda Element gurus?